Shabbat Shalom. I am one of the lucky ones who received an invitation to join Clubhouse recently. Now, for those who may not know, and there might be a lot of folks here, Clubhouse is a new social media audio app that is part podcast, part radio show, and part Zoom seminar. Hosts facilitate conversations about any topic you can think of. You can drop in, listen for a while, and then leave quietly. Moderators keep the conversation moving, providing those who want to a space to share. I dropped into the Shabbat Shalom room last Friday night after services while making dinner. Those in that room were invited to share stories of gratitude, and periodically one of the co-hosts would lead the room in prayer. It was quite lovely, and once dinner was ready, I quietly left the room. I didn't know the people in the room, but still felt part of that community for a brief moment in time. Last night, I dropped into the Torah study room hosted by Rabbi David Wolpe, one of America's leading rabbis, and I joined several hundred others who listened in on his teaching. He taught some lovely, accessible, and enlightening Torah. And once again, like last Shabbos, I stayed for a while, listened, and then left quietly. And again, I didn't know the people in the room, but still felt part of that community for a brief moment in time. And one lesson that Rabbi Wolpe taught last night that I've been ruminating on is this dichotomy between things that are permanent and things that are temporary. For permanency, he spoke of the Eish Tamid, translated one way as the everyday fire that blazes on the sacrificial altar, ready to receive the sacrifices of the people. The Eish Tamid, the everyday fire, is a core feature of the altar upon which the Israelites bring the best of their flocks, herds, and fields to sacrifice to God as burnt offerings. And in order to keep the Eish Tamid burning, the people have to share in the task of keeping it lit all the time. Now, this is an appropriate idea to expound upon tonight as we mark 1 year of Zoom Shabbat services. Now, why this idea of the Eish Tamid? Because without the investment of time and energy by countless numbers of people, the flames would go out. Had not so many of you invested in tending our Eish Tamid, our Shir Emi flame could have easily diminished greatly over the past year. But it didn't. In many ways, it shines even more brightly today. Think for a moment how quickly we transformed ourselves from a brick and mortar synagogue to an online version of our best self. Think back on those early days of Zoom when we barely knew what we were doing. Things like, you would mute yourself and you wouldn't even know. Yes, I did that on purpose, folks. I know exactly what I'm doing. Think of the initial mistakes we made, then corrected, so that now we can operate in this modality almost seamlessly. Shir Emi's flame continues to burn brightly because of our ability to keep it lit every day, even through the most desperate and frightening moments of the pandemic. Today, a steady stream of flame keepers tend to it, keeping it alit as we continue to perform our sacred work for the community. Another feature of this biblical flame is its permanence. Unlike Clubhouse, where one drops in and out quietly and anonymously, where things are very far from being permanent, Shir Emi is more about anchoring people to our community. We form and strengthen sacred and intentional communities every day. And this, my friends, requires the care and attention of countless people to maintain the flame on the altar. We bring the best of ourselves to one another and to God. And of course, it requires commitment, continuity, and connection. As I reflect on this past year, I think every day about the many ways that so many of you have maintained your commitment to our congregation, have strengthened connections with one another, and are here to journey with us to the next stage of what a reinvigorated post-pandemic Shir Ami could look like. You've embraced the technology. You participate in the online programs we've created. You express gratitude for the many ways we've endeavored to maintain our connection with you. And you've shown up when called upon. Despite not being in person, I believe we've enlisted more volunteers than ever before since last March. You've made phone calls to our members, delivered goodie baskets at Rosh Hashanah and Purim, worked in the food bank, and more. Despite not being in person, we've doubled the number of people who join us for our Friday night Shabbat services. Despite not being in person, we've likely touched more souls directly through any number of outreach efforts that we would have in a normal year. Sometimes for better, and yes, sometimes for worse. We've gotten very comfortable with being very comfortable. Services in your slippers or pajama bottoms, seated in your favorite comfortable chair. You don't have to drive anywhere or get dressed up or put on makeup. You can eat dinner while praying, knit or build Legos while praying, work out while praying. The pandemic has made it very easy to engage on your own terms. And that is one of the many things we will need to maintain once we ease back into post-pandemic normal. But no matter how well we create a Zoom environment for Shabbat and learning and other programs, it doesn't replace the one-to-one human connection that we yearn for and that we desperately need. I imagine that when people say they miss coming to Shabbat services in person, a lot of it has to do as much about being in the space, but it also has to do with missing the Oneg Shabbat afterwards, the time to connect and reconnect with the familiar faces we look forward to seeing each and every week. Zoom has been very helpful in creating a sense of Shabbat routine and providing ongoing engagement and different ways to connect with our congregation and with one another. But it still cannot replace the power of being in community with one another, face to masked face. We know far too well the tremendous losses from the past year, and I don't need to dwell on them. However, as I am wont to do, we also focus on what we've gained and what we will likely retain in the future, especially within the synagogue. For example, when a friend who lives cross-country gathers a Shiva Minyan for their parents or celebrates their child becoming Bar Mitzvah, we can participate easily, especially when we can't be with them in person. If we don't like to drive at night, we can log on and participate in almost any offering virtually. When I want to bring in a speaker from out of town, I no longer have to pay for flights, food, and hotels. They don't have to step away from their family. They just log on with us and we participate together. What that will look like in the future, I still don't know, but I can imagine ways to bring that learning and this gathering and connection to us quite powerfully. Earlier this week, I participated in my second virtual rabbinic conference. The one this time last year was organized from in-person to virtual in about 2 weeks. This one had about a year to plan. It went off much more smoothly. One workshop asked us to look at the past, present, and future and reflect on what it once looked like, what it's like now, and what we imagine it will look like once we are living in a post-pandemic world. We were asked to respond to the questions: what have I learned? What do I know? What do I not know? And what do I need to know? Upon reflection, I know I have learned much about myself as a person, husband, father, and rabbi over the past year. I've learned much about congregations in general and ours in particular. I've learned so much about you, especially in the regular conversations we've had over the course of the year. However, looking forward, there is so much I don't know and so much I still need to know. I imagine we all feel this way. That is why looking ahead is both exciting and terrifying. I'm beginning to imagine what a post-pandemic Shir Me might look like. And that's exciting. How to lead us there? We're all still trying to figure that out. And this is how the original text about the Eish Tamid frames my thoughts. We will get there only if we are in it all together. One person cannot be responsible for keeping the flames lit every day. We take turns. We work as a community, collectively taking responsibility. As individuals, some days we work, other days we rest. But as a community, we are continually stoking the fire, bringing our offerings that are pleasing to God. I knew that we'd be in this situation for a long time, and I knew months ago that Passover this year would be online once again. But the beauty of this year is that I know so much more about leading online ritual programming now than I did a year ago. And this is a gift, and one that I know will continue to draw upon in a post-pandemic congregation, one that will eventually and ultimately blend the best of the online experience with the in-person experience. In this present moment and in the future, whatever that may look like, Shir Ami needs to be a place of permanence and continuity, especially within a Jewish environment that can seem unstable or even fleeting. Yes, we can participate in Clubhouse and discover these ephemeral moments of connection and even meaning. But what we really need is the permanence of place through sacred, intentional communities as our people keep the fire burning all the time. Shabbat Shalom.